Good day, it's Miss Lindisha.
And Miss Leanna from Friends of the Environment.
We're back with another water lesson, which is identifying freshwater resources in the Bahamas. Today we will explore the term resources and the various forms of resources in regards to freshwater.
So, what is a natural resource? A natural resource is anything that can be found in nature, not made by man, and can be used by people. Earth's natural resources include light, air, water, plants, animals, soil, stone, minerals, and fossil fuels. Natural resources can be divided into two groups: renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources are ones that can be used again and again. For example, soil, sunlight, and water are renewable resources. A non-renewable resource is a resource that does not grow and come back, or a resource that would take a very long time to come back. For example, coal is a non-renewable resource.
We know that water was included as a renewable resource. Do we believe that fresh water is a renewable resource? Yes, it is. Unfortunately, sometimes water is not easily renewed. Fresh water is not evenly distributed around the world, and its availability is really important for where living things can exist. Getting enough fresh water is a serious problem in many places, and water pollution is a worldwide problem affecting even areas with a large water supply. So, even though water is a renewable resource, the supply of surface water is limited in some places. So, water is both a renewable and limited resource. Fresh water is a limited resource, and this is due to its high demand. A limited resource is one that can run out. There might not be enough for everyone in the future. Humans make the water recycling process difficult for Mother Nature to keep up with. How do you all think that we as humans make it hard for Mother Nature to keep up with the water recycling process? As population and industries grow, the demand for water becomes too high, which results in water scarcity. Water scarcity is a lack of drinkable water available in a given area.
So let's talk about sources of fresh water in the Bahamas. Earlier, we spoke about how water is unevenly distributed throughout the world, but water is also unevenly distributed right here throughout the islands of the Bahamas. The difference in our location affects where our water comes from. Here in the Bahamas, we have multiple sources of fresh water, which vary on the different islands.
Rainwater is a common source of fresh water, particularly on smaller islands and keys that do not have connection to any water utility company, like the Water and Sewage Corporation, also known as WSC. Some individual homes have special equipment, like gutters, installed to collect rainwater that is stored in a tank for use. Rainfall decreases from north to south throughout the archipelago, so this is not a good option for the more southern islands. For example, Inagua, the southernmost island, is practically a desert. Do you all know what a desert is? A desert is a barren area of land where there's barely any rain, so it's hard for plant and animal life to thrive there because of the extreme conditions.
Groundwater. Groundwater is exactly what it sounds like. It is water found in the ground. Groundwater is defined as water held underground. This water is either absorbed within the soil or found in crevices in rock. The Bahamas bedrock is made up of a very porous rock called limestone. What do I mean by porous? Has anyone ever watched SpongeBob? Similar to SpongeBob or our average kitchen sponge, limestone absorbs or sucks up and stores water really well. When the fresh water from rain seeps into the ground, it becomes trapped as groundwater. So how do we use this groundwater? Wells are dug to access the groundwater.
Has anyone in here ever been to a blue hole? Does anyone want to take a guess at what a blue hole is? Well, a blue hole is just a flooded cave. So maybe at one point long ago, the blue hole was once a dry cave, but over time, as sea levels rose, it became filled with water. There are two types of blue holes. One, ocean holes, which is exactly what it sounds like, blue holes found in the ocean. For example, Dean's Blue Hole in Long Island is the second deepest blue hole in the world. 2. Inland blue holes, which are blue holes found on land. Very popular to be found on the northernmost islands in the pine forest, but are scattered throughout the archipelago. Inland blue holes are the blue holes we are speaking about when talking about Bahamian freshwater resources. Inland blue holes are the only source of surface freshwater in the Bahamas. Surface water is found on top of the Earth's surface, like rivers, lakes, creeks, streams, and other wetlands. If you have ever been in an inland blue hole, what kind of water were you swimming in? Inland blue holes have multiple layers. Similar to groundwater, the very top layer of inland blue holes is made up of fresh water collected from rain. In the past, fresh water was harvested from this lens to be used. Then there's brackish water, which is a mix of salt and fresh water, and at the very bottom, there is salt water.
The ocean. Can you drink seawater? No. However, there is a process that allows salt water from the ocean to be converted into fresh water. So in some cases, fresh water can even be considered an ocean resource. The process that can be used to change seawater to fresh water is called reverse osmosis, also known as RO. Reverse osmosis is how you can get small particles like salts out of water by forcing it through a filter or a membrane. The particles in the water are left on the other side of the sheet while the water travels through it.
Earlier, we spoke about how water is unevenly distributed throughout the world, but water is also unevenly distributed right here throughout the islands of the Bahamas. The difference in our location affects where our water comes from. Here in the Bahamas, we have multiple sources of fresh water which vary on the different islands. So we're going to talk about some of the past practices for accessing these fresh water resources.
Rainwater collection. As previously mentioned, rainwater collection was not a reliable source. One, because all islands do not experience consistent rainfall, and two, on islands that were more prone to rainfall, the rainfall is not consistent year-round.
Inland blue holes are refueled by rainfall. Once these features had been exploited, meaning pumped of fresh water before they could be replenished, which means that filled back up, they were no longer reliable sources of fresh water.
Shallow dug wells were used to harvest groundwater to be pumped throughout the islands for use. However, this was not the best way of harvesting water because these wells were more difficult to protect from contamination, and their yields were also very low because they do not penetrate into the reliable freshwater resources.
We have spoken about past practices for accessing, which means ways of getting fresh water. Now we will discuss the current practices. Primarily, past practices were abandoned because of their overuse and damaging of our natural water resources. Improved technology has also played a large part in our ability to making these transitions.
Islands with larger and more readily accessible groundwater supplies like Grand Bahama, Abaco, and Andros still rely on groundwater. Well fields still exist where groundwater is gotten, treated, and then pumped to consumers. On the island of Abaco, a well field in South Abaco is in the process of becoming fully powered by solar energy, which is energy from the sun. In more southern islands, due to lack of groundwater supplies, they are depending on reverse osmosis.
So, what are some challenges that we face when sourcing freshwater supplies here in the Bahamas?
Well, a major challenge that we face is that only 3 islands in the Bahamas have significant freshwater resources. Those islands are Andros, Abaco, and Grand Bahama.
Another major challenge is that some islands and keys have no naturally existing freshwater resources that can supply their needs.
Finally, the greatest and most common challenge is man, like you and me. Freshwater resources are easily destroyed by human activities. These activities include the dredging of canals, mining, the digging of wells, and pollution.
Have you guys thought of ways we can conserve water? Remember, every drop counts.